So everyone, welcome to our first installment of MyGovWatch Live, the B2G RFP Roundtable sponsored by MyGovWatch.com. MyGovWatch.com is revolutionizing traditional bid notification and matching by providing RFP leads in more than 200 industries at double the rate of free government sites at a fraction of the cost of the industry big boys, while also offering useful add-on services you can read about at MyGovWatch.com. Today is Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022, and this is the episode in the series. So we thought long and hard in create series about what we would call it, how we would structure it, and we ultimately arrived at what we thought was missing from the knowledge media, let's call it, the social media knowledge industry, where people are using Zoom and other technologies to talk to people. Now that we no longer have as many conferences and physical events, hopefully that will change. So we realized that we're offering a radio call-in style format that was extremely casual, that was not meant to be a monologue where someone is presenting content, but that people are contributing in the sense of a roundtable. So if you think about it, the analogy that we're going for with this event and the event series is that we are all at an event like a conference, and there might be a roundtable with 10 people at it, and we're all at it. And so we have a co-host with a co-most that you're going to meet in a moment. But the purpose of this event is not solely for us to dispense knowledge to you. Hopefully there is some transfer, but others on this call may have other ideas who may help someone with a question have that question answered and contribute meaningfully to their understanding about how to win more government contracts. So we hope you get something from it. We hope it's fun. If it's not entertaining, because as we know, government contracts may not be fundamentally as interesting as other things. If it's not entertaining, then we didn't do a good job and we're going to do better next time. But I think it's going to be fun. So joining us today is Dr. Kizzy Parks, who I've referred to as our co-host with the co-most. Kizzy, we haven't known each other long, but you shared something with me recently, and it actually ties into how I'm going to try to get other people to participate in this session. So what was your first job, and how did it help you get to where you are today? And I think it has something to do with my passion, which is...
Yeah, definitely. And welcome everyone. One of the first things I did as a kid to make extra money, there were a few, but one of my favorites involved golf. And there was a golf course in Danville, Illinois, and there were tons of golf balls behind my friend's house in this alley. And I was in around elementary school at the time. And so I would take the golf balls. I knew that they ranged in value. And then I would just sell them back to the golfers because there was a chain link fence separating the golf course from the alley by my friend's house. So that was really cool. It just, it takes a lot of different skills to be able to talk to someone when you're 12, if even that old. In fifth grade, you're probably younger. And so it was cool. It was great to do that, to buy my favorite things at the time, which were Funyuns and Nutty Bars from the corner store. We all have our why. Today might be a Lambo. Then it was a fun bag of Funyuns.
Totally different set of priorities. And it was funny when you had mentioned that earlier, because I had a similar experience. So in order to get to the municipal pool in Philadelphia where I lived, you could either walk around the golf course or you could cut through it. And so we shouldn't have been there. And there was even a creek, or as we call it in Philadelphia, a crick, which is not a word that everybody knows on this call, I'm sure. But you had to actually go through the crick to get to the pool. And we would also do that and find some balls and sell them to the golfers. So a lot of good memories there. And folks, I just want to mention also that Kizzy is the operator of K Parks Consulting. And that's a recent 8A program graduate. And Kizzy has a doctorate from the Florida Institute of Technology. And she's actually received over 60 million in federal government contract awards. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right into it here. And I understand that Carrie Carrie's on the line with us. Carrie, can you turn off your muting? Because I'd like to directly engage everyone who submitted content. Are you there? We just need, we see that you're on, Carrie. There we go.
Hello. Sorry, this isn't Carrie. I am with CSN, but Carrie wasn't able to attend today. But my name is Elise.
Hi, Elise. Welcome to the
Hi.
MyGovWatch Live series. So,
Thank you.
Elise, what we'd like to do is we would like to address the question that Carrie did submit. And
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we understand it. So the comment was that Carrie wanted to talk about licensing requirements and opportunities for WBEs. And I hate to put you on the spot, but only because I was going to ask Carrie this question directly. Can you elaborate a little bit on what he was going for there?
Well, I believe he was wanting to know if it's feasible for a company that is nationally, regionally licensed versus nationally, if it's feasible for us to put in these bids. If you think that we would win any, if we're just, more so licensed on the west side of the country.
Okay, so Kizzy, I'm going to take the question because I know it happens to be industry specific. And just looking up your company, Elise, I know what industry you're in. And so I would just say this to you, and for the folks who are not listening, Elise's company happens to be in the call center and debt collection space. And so I would say that you should realize that a lot of debts that are owed to the government are not actually debts per se covered by the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And they're also not necessarily subject to licensing requirements because of that. So I would encourage you to realize that not every state requires a license, and a lot of these transactions between citizens and government agencies are fundamentally not debts. So we always encourage people in your industry to be a little bit aggressive about where you're bidding and where you're looking for opportunities. And if you're not sure, it's always better to put a bid out if you have the time to put one together, because you'll get some feedback from that process. Now, there's not necessarily a direct tie-in with the WBE. In other words, whether you're competing on that basis would be totally different or removed from whether or not you're licensing in your industry. Does that help?
Sorry, I think you froze a little bit there, but yes, that did help answer the question, and I will relay that information on over to Carrie.
And also, and I would say this to everyone on the call or on the Zoom session, feel free to drop me a line directly, nick.bernardo, BERNARDO @mygovwatch.com. And we can trade some emails back and forth about that if you want to go further with it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. So we have Sue Webb on the line with us. Sue, I'm wondering if you would be kind enough to join us with your audio and video. And I'll just say this to everyone. There's no requirement that you join with video. I know some folks may be in a better position to do that than others and maybe more willing than others. But Sue, are you willing to join us with at least your audio?
I am here. Hello.
Hi, Sue. Welcome to the call. So, Sue.
Yes.
And again, I want to try to make this a little lighthearted and keep it fun. So can you tell us what was your first job, and did that have any bearing at all on what eventually got you interested in government contracts or in running your own business in general?
I'll turn on my camera for this, but I don't have capabilities. I don't think I have the ability to turn my camera on.
And that's fine.
Anyway, so I want to say that Kizzy and I are from nearby places. I grew up on a farm near in central Illinois. And so my first job was working on the farm. And there were 8 girls in my family and 1 boy. And so we all became very strong and independent women. And I'm actually not the business owner. I'm the director of strategy for marketing and ad agency. But our interest in government contracting is, we're women owned. We're just getting our veteran owned status, and we haven't been able to break through. And we don't know if it's our RFPs. We don't know what it is, but we want to learn so that we can grow in that area. And we do a lot of governmental things, but we've not landed the big ones yet.
So Kizzy, would you like to respond to that first?
Yeah, definitely. So you're in a great spot, Sue. It's for everyone listening, and it's really important to know how to really kind of connect with an agency. So I have a question. You said you have some government work. Is it federal work, state work, a mixture?
It's mostly state and municipality. Actually,
Okay.
I should say it's almost all municipality and counties and that sort of work. But you know, the thing is we get to the end, and then we're wondering if we're not big enough, and that we should be partnering with other contractors as the minority portion and the veteran portion. We don't know if that will help us working with other larger agencies, and we would get an area of it. Like, we're highly specialized in SEO. Well, there's not a ton of people that are highly specialized in that. So I guess that's my answer. I don't know if I answered the question.
No, that's perfect. I just like to get an understanding, because there's three things here. Number one, regardless of the opportunity, you have to meet or exceed the evaluation criteria.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that with many of your proposals, that's an area to further take a deep dive in, because on the government side, if you're not meeting and exceeding it, then you're not going to win. The second thing is, when it comes to the federal government, they want to get to know you. They want to like you. They want to trust you. It doesn't matter whether you're specialized, doesn't specialize, you're in DC, you're not in DC. When I first started out, I was in graduate school. I got my first almost 6-figure contract. I wasn't even in SAM. So it's not about all of the technical things. It's about you and the value you add. I added value. I still add value. That's why my flagship company continues on. So the same goes for you. So that second big piece is reaching out to small business reps, small business offices, and or attending any kind of outreach events, but definitely small business reps, small business office, small business reps, anyone connected to a small business. And I call it dialing for dollars. And it literally is you emailing, calling, and asking to hold a capability brief, because there's thousands of companies out there. And if they don't know who you are, regardless of accolades and specialties, and I mean, you could have a blessing from Harvard University. It's about, they need to get to know you. And so what's great is they get to know you, and oh my gosh, wow, you grew up in the Midwest. That's awesome. You know, I lived in Rantoul and I lived in Danville. It allows you to have that person to person connection. So then they think of you, so that you're, in addition to you bidding on RFPs and sources sought and RFIs and RFQs, you're also building your pipeline. So when they think of opportunities, you come top of mind. Or if there's a market research opportunity, you come top of mind. Or if they believe maybe you need to partner with someone, they will say those things. And so what's great is you got to get out there and contact. And I say dialing for dollars, not to minimize what this is. It's because in the federal government space, the different stakeholders, even a small business rep, they have other tasks, right? They all have these tasks. So they're not just waiting by their cell phone or office line or email to respond to 10,000 companies that want to talk to them about their amazing offerings. So what's cool is you just don't give up, because too many give up early. And when you give up early, then you're going to not succeed. And you're going to say, yep, I don't want to do it. Let's just stay with municipality, which is nothing wrong with that either. But the thing is, that's number two. The third thing.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yes.
I don't think I'm understanding. Who are you saying to reach out to?
Small business reps with the different government agencies that you're interested in doing work with. Pretty much every single agency has what's called a small business office and a small business rep. And in theory, that rep's job is to help increase or introduce that agency to small businesses.
Okay. Cool. How do you
And
find those?
There's a list. One of them is acquisition.gov. There's on one of the tabs, you can look up small businesses. I'm unsure if in your current subscription, if you have those, you can, acquisition.gov is a good place to search. Nick, do you have a list in your portal?
Well, I was actually going to suggest some other things, and it did. And by the way, I agree with everything you said. So let me just ask this question: Are we only talking about federal here, or are we talking about local as well? Because a lot of what Kizzy was talking about, she nailed it federally, and also a lot of it applies locally, depending on how large the jurisdiction is. But where are your interests in government contracting?
Well, am I on? Yeah. Probably anywhere across the board. Our services would work for any agency. We got to the final two with a really large federal contract and we didn't get it. So we know we have the capabilities. We just haven't pushed through past a regional level. So
Okay.
I would say any and all.
So again, I agree with everything Kizzy said. I would add this as well. There are different data sources. So Kizzy mentioned small business reps. I think it's the OSTABU office, the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. So every federal agency has an OSTABU office. And then you have other data sources. You have if you're interested in partnering, you have sam.gov, right? And once you're logged in, you can look up different companies that are in different parts of the country based on NAICS code. So if you look up your NAICS code, you can look up companies that are similar to you. And that might be a way of identifying teaming opportunities. I'm not saying teaming's right for you. I'm saying if that were right for you, that would be one way of doing it. Then you can also cross-check that with usaspending.gov so that you can see which companies on SAM are actually receiving federal contracting dollars. So those are some things federally that would help connect you with private companies on top of the outreach to the public officials that Kizzy's referring to. Another thing I would say, this would also apply, this would be mainly state and local, but would apply federally as well. Have you ever done an open records request against a procurement?
We've not.
Okay. So, obviously this is self-promotion. That's why we're doing this series, but on MyGovWatch, you can actually ask us to go get the results of a bid process in a way that's anonymous, so that if you're not really sure why you're not winning contracts that you're bidding on, you can just buy credits on the site and we will actually go get those documents for you so that you're anonymous, because sometimes they become contentious and the government officials don't want to give you that information. And that's something you can do on the site. But even if you don't use our site, you can still do that. So if you have the time and you'd like to go find out and read some information that shows you why other companies were picked for a contract, you can do that through open records. And that's an important part, because sometimes what people will tell you, you may get a sense that they might just be giving you something really superficial, but sometimes the documents you get through open records really have a lot of detailed information. So that's what I would add to that.
So is the documentation that you get through open records everything that was submitted, or was it just their selection process and their notes?
Different states have different things that are releasable and different exemptions, but we're always asking for evaluation documents, lists of bidders, pricing submitted by each bidder, a copy of the winning proposal, and any reports that are related to the execute or the delivery of the contract, because sometimes it might take us months to get the information and you can see how it's going in these documents. So, and again, that's something you can have us do, but you can do that yourself. And we can trade some emails about that if it's of interest.
Okay, very good. This is all great information. We're infants here.
Well, and we're going to turn our attention here, and we have some folks on the call with us who we've been doing business with for a number of years. And so I'm going to start with Melissa Feigley. And Melissa, I want to apologize. I think in order to have people use their cameras, we had to make you a panelist. So we're going to try to do that. We're going to try to do that with each person who submitted content ideas. So if you want to turn on your camera, you can do that. But how are you today, Melissa? I know you're there.
Sorry, I was unconnected there for a second.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Thanks for joining us, Melissa. How have you been?
I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good, good. You have a very interesting topic, and that topic is how to find better MeBe-Weebie partners. And before we get into that, Melissa, we've known each other a long time. How did you actually get into government contracting, and what was your first job, and does it have anything to do with it?
No, it does not. I was a technical writer for a medical technology company in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. But I had experience with RFPs in that position, which led me to subsequent positions and, responding to RFPs.
Yeah, and I just want to say this for the entire audience. There are people on the line, obviously, who are new to government contracting, but there are some folks on the line who have won lots of government contracts through their employers and who are very familiar with the process. And this idea of how to identify MeBe-Weebie partners. And Kizzy, I wonder if you agree with this. I feel like a lot of the things we're talking about today and a lot of things we haven't talked about yet, there might be one answer federally, and that answer might be very different at the state and local level. And I wonder if you agree.
I mean, it definitely is. I mean, we don't bid on my flagship companies, which I don't operate because I have my new business that I run, but I own it. We don't bid on state level. For federal government, there's a way and a method, and there's rules, and there's things that I love and adore. And so, but that's what's really exciting about being an entrepreneur. If you were to sell something on Amazon, you're going to take a different approach if you were selling it to the state of Missouri, if you were selling it to Department of Justice. But that's what I think is so much fun about this, is that you can take a method or a technique and kind of alter it, not only for the client, but you can also do so for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of finding MeBe-Weebie partners, and let's just clarify the terms here. So at the federal level, we do have the WOSB program, and you have the Small Disadvantaged Business Program. At the state and local level, you have the MeBe-Weebie designations, which are related but somewhat different. Melissa, what are you doing today to try to identify these partners?
So my question was really about finding for state level opportunities. And a lot of times we're asked to provide an economic benefit to that state using a minority partner, a MeBe-Weebie partner, and we're having trouble finding a company that will give us some heft and get us a significant economic benefit that will make us attractive to the state. There is often a list provided, but it's kind of like cold calling these companies and seeing if you can make a match or not without really knowing the company. If there's a better way of getting a relationship ahead of time.
Well, the good news is there are ways. The bad news is I feel like the answer I'm about to give you can be somewhat resource intensive. So just think of a Venn diagram. So there are companies that maybe women or minority owned that have a lot of capabilities and are very established companies. And there are companies that bid on government contracts, and sometimes the companies that might be the best partners may not be active in government contracting. And by the same token, there might be companies that have a strong desire to partner with you who might be startups or might not have the experience that can actually help you. So a lot of the data sources that we're going to talk about in this series, they're going to keep coming up again. But for example, if we look at Cook County, Illinois, that's one that I looked up today, this morning, just in preparation for talking about this. We know that there's a searchable system in Cook County, Illinois, but just because you're in Cook County's system doesn't mean that you are a significantly sized company enough to be a tremendous partner. I would encourage you to look at sam.gov, right? And you may find deltas between who is in Cook County. Let's say you're bidding on a Cook County contract. You may find companies that are on SAM that just haven't expressed an interest in creating an account on Cook County system, and vice versa, right? As one example of how you can identify companies. And then you can also cross-reference with the USA Spending database, usaspending.gov, to see which companies, maybe even in the Cook County system, are working on federal contracts, which would be an indicator that they might be more substantial companies. So I would also mention open records, and you have access to a lot of this through your account, the nature of your premium account. A lot of times at the contract level, if we have the history, you can actually see who was used as a partner at the contract level the previous time that the opportunity came up. So I think what I just kind of went over there, I feel like it sounds like it could be a tremendous undertaking, and I wonder how you would respond to that.
No, I think those are all good sources, and it's definitely worth my time to investigate them. It's just so I'm being more proactive and not scrambling at the last minute.
Yeah, and Kizzy, what's your experience at the state and local level? I know you spend a lot of time with federal government contracting. Do you care to add to this?
Yeah, I'll add two things. I mean, it's one of those situations where first and foremost, you have to decide what is the criteria. You talk about you want to find better, you want a more qualified. Well, what does that mean? What are those items? So really identify what are they other than being woman or minority owned or lived or being in a certain county. Maybe there's other things you're looking for. Maybe it's the number of employees, culture, who knows, right? So that's number one, is being really honest about your criteria. Number two is this is something where if you really put in the time and energy, you're going to end up creating a garden. So by what you can do is not only leverage these lists, which I had a prime contractor contact my flagship company for a very large contract in the state of Florida. And my company is one of many subcontractors. Why? Because we are on a list and we have that work with them. But what you can do is leverage not only the list and all the other tips that were provided, but you can also leverage LinkedIn and go a step further. You could have an open house event. You could have an event on Zoom. You could have it on where you could even have an Instagram Live, whatever works for you. Have this kind of event where you're like, hey, we would love to get to know different companies, because in that way, if they're taking the initiative to meet with you, that's number one, that says something. Because it's very easy to say, oh, you're looking for a partner. Hey, I'm here. That's really minimal work. So by having kind of like outreach events, open house events, it allows you to get to know them, feel them out, and then you're constantly growing and creating this fruitful garden. So you're not waiting to the last minute. Or if you decide to bid on something in Alaska, you're not scrambling to figure out how to find someone there. And then that'll snowball. So then people will also start to refer you. So it's about leveraging what's out there, creating this community by outreaching with individuals, and most importantly, having that criteria. So you're very, very, very honest with what you're looking for in a vendor.
Yeah, those are all great ideas. Thank you.
And one last thing on that, Melissa. So obviously, you know that we do the open records process in your industry, but just because we're doing that activity doesn't mean you can't go further with it. So for example, if you thought that you were bidding on something in Cook County next year or later this year, you could do an open request and say, show me the winning proposal for every contract that had a NEBI requirement in the last year. And it might take you a few months to get those documents, but those may even go far beyond what we're serving up to you.
Okay.
So good. And we can always trade emails on this stuff as well.
Sure.
So thank you for participating. So we're going to go back to the list here, and let's see if we have Jennifer Gaines. Jennifer, are you with us? Okay, we lost Jennifer. We're going to see if is Alex Van Deventer on with us? Alex, maybe. I know you're on the call, but you may be on mute. And there we go. Alexis. All right, Alexis, we will come back to you once we figure out what's going on with your microphone there. So how about Sergio? Sergio, are you with us?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Sergio Martinez. Glad to be with you guys.
Hey, Sergio, thank you so much for joining you. How are you? So Sergio, what was your first job And does it have anything to do with what you do now?
So my first job actually right out of high school was as a bill collector, and I worked for a small mom and pop company that was trying to. They were primarily utilities. I was paying my way through college. I was going to be an English teacher. And one day the owner approached me, says, "Hey, we're trying to do this RFP. Can you take a look at this and make sure, we don't have any grammatical mistakes?" I'm like, "Sure, I can do that." And from there, that pretty much started RFP writing. I joined a company out of college as their government specialist, writing their RFPs, and kind of went into sales and marketing for call centers, account receivable management, BPO, and kind of moved away from the government, and now started with a new company about a year ago, and just kind of decided to take a look and see what's going on the government side, see if it's something that we might want to do. We're a veteran-owned, certified veteran-owned company, so I thought it might be worthwhile to join the call and see what you guys got going on.
And Kizzy, I would like to invite you to talk about this with us. So breaking into government work with experienced staff, but no references. That's what we're talking about, folks. How do you break into government markets if you have people who know what they're doing, but it's hard to show at the corporate or company level? You may not have the references, but you have the people. You mentioned that the company is veteran owned, right? And not service disabled veteran owned. Is that correct, Sergio?
That is correct. It is not service disabled. It is veteran owned.
So for the benefit of anyone who may not be familiar with those designations, only the Department of Veterans Affairs, I believe, Kizzy can correct me if I'm wrong, only the Department of Veterans Affairs has a veteran owned spending requirement. But every federal agency has a service disabled veteran owned spending requirement. So Kizzy, would you like to speak to, at the federal level, breaking into some of these contracts if you have people with experience, but no corporate references? And maybe I'll talk about the state and local angle.
Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize what I'm going to emphasize enough. And that is, you got to set aside references, past performance. It's about the evaluation criteria, period. If the evaluation criteria is lowest cost technically acceptable, then it doesn't matter if you don't have references or not. However, if the evaluation criteria is you need 3 past performance examples performed in the last 3 years with similar agencies, then in order to meet that requirement, you would have to partner. And here's what's tricky about partnering, because many think, oh, I don't have the past performance, I don't have the requirement, I can't meet this requirement, I just partner. If you as a small business rely too heavily on your partner as the prime, the government could say that they can't award that to you because you don't have that past performance, and you only have it because of the company you're partnering with. So what I recommend is, number one, that you bid on opportunities where past performance is not the key evaluation criteria. Number two, you have to a lot of outreach, because when they get to know you, they're going to look past that you may not have the different things that they're looking for. And third is, I would partner with a business, especially a company in your field, who is not service disabled or veteran owned, because at least you offer them that veteran owned set aside. So then you can partner with them and be a sub. So then that'll better position you. So then you can win even more work as a prime.
And Sergio, I'm going to make this assumption, but wouldn't it be true that you're interested equally in state and local contracts as well?
I think so, yes.
Okay. So we see this all the time, and it's always shocking to me, but there are bid processes where we may get the results through open records where they'll say, we can't send you a winning proposal because there wasn't one. Well, why wasn't there one? Oh, we canceled the bid. Why did you cancel it? We received 0 bids. So that certainly is an opportunity, because there's a lot of flexibility that, especially at the state and local level, if no one bids on a contract, there's a lot more that can be done there to either modify the solicitation if they're planning to do a solicit or another parameter, just do some old-fashioned direct sales, depending on, you know, the size of the opportunity. So I would say opportunities that no one else wants because they haven't bid on it, or opportunities where you see the RFP and if you hear someone say, "Oh, we're not bidding on that. This is not, you know, just not something that's of interest to us." We have so many clients over the years who have successfully gotten desirable contracts because they were willing to take one for the team, so to speak, and bid on and win and service a contract that is really just a loss leader. And I'm not saying, you know, underbidding something to the point where you're giving the work away for free, but doing a contract even at marginal profit levels so that you are able to have that reference. And we've seen that work time and time again. And I wonder if that helps.
It certainly does. Thank you.
Okay. So, so let's talk to Mr. Frederick Knapp. Frederick, are you there with us?
I am. I'm here.
Frederick, welcome to the call. And Frederick, I understand your business is as a hearing officer. Is that correct?
Yes.
And going way back in time, 10 years ago when you were a kid, what was your first job? And so my very first job was actually mixing cement for my grandfather, who was a masonry contractor. What was your first job, and has it helped you along the way? And does it have any bearing on what you do today?
Supermarket cashier. And I would say, to some extent, it helped. I mean, it learned a lot about the workplace, and my career has included working as an attorney representing employers and employees. So knowledge of the workplace from the ground up was very important. Even though it's a very humble start, it was very important.
Absolutely. And I seem to understand that, haven't you had some success bidding on government contracts in the past? And maybe can you tell us just a little bit about what your experience has been? How long have you been bidding on contracts?
My experience over 30 years, I've represented municipalities in various capacities as an attorney. And for much of that time, it was through the bidding process here in New Jersey. New Jersey has what they call a pay-to-play law for public sector contracts that has existed for, I want to say, approximately 20 years. Before that, jobs were handed out pretty much by patronage. But since then, there is a formal bidding process, what's called the fair and open process, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes.
And so everyone has had to submit responses to RFPs over the years. So we had an advantage. I had an advantage that for years I was already serving in this capacity for many clients, even before the formal RFP process commenced. But I built on that. I was able to expand my practice.
And how many government contracts are you working on today?
Right now, well, I was in government service for about 8 years. I'm back in the private sector now for about 1.5 years. So I currently have, I would say, 3 or 4.
Okay.
But I'm expanding on that.
Okay. So, and you are a practicing attorney then?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so there may be topics that we try to deal with on these sessions where we might, be careful, because I don't want to go beyond my depth. But as an attorney, if you have some government contracts, what do you feel is the number one obstacle preventing you from winning more?
It's tough to say. In fact, I was intrigued by hearing you say that you will Oprah the bidding documents, because that's something that would be an eye opener. I haven't been able to find out, but I've put out bids for, work all over the state. And some are positive and some aren't. But if you don't get a response, you really have no idea why they rejected you. They're not going to tell you over the phone. You would have to find out, some other way. Either you knew somebody who was involved in the process, or you're able to obtain the documents.
Right. And sometimes the documents will give you the answer, and sometimes
Right.
they may not totally give you what you're looking for, and you may
Mhm.
just need to use your contacts.
Yeah.
But do you have an issue with capacity of responding to the RFPs, or hearing about them, or servicing the
Well,
relationship with you?
I was able to use your service and other similar services to find out about the bids. Simply Googling them is really a very limited approach, because some of them are you'll find that way, and some you'll miss. So to have a service like yours, or there's a couple of others that are similar, they've been very helpful.
Well, and we like to see that people are using the site and getting benefit
Yes.
from it. So as we go into this, we can trade some email, and some of your obstacles may be, but it sounds like you're well on your way if you have some municipal work already, and maybe doing some of the open records requests to find out where the gaps may be, or the perceived gaps may be. That might be the way to go.
Is that an additional service that you have to subscribe to, or is it within the basic service?
So the basic service is a free, and that gets you access to leads, I think, in one state, for state and local, not federal. Once you go to a paid plan, now that opens up some opportunities to have us go get some of the information post-award. Now that is an additional cost, but for somebody who already is in government contracting, it might be worth the small investment.
Good to know. Thank you.
And thanks for joining us, Frederick. So
My pleasure.
we also have Tanya Burgess on the line with us. Tanya, would you be willing to join us with your audio? We know you're there, Tanya. It's just the microphone. Okay, Tanya, we're going to come back to you, and we're going to ask Scott Galen, if you could join us.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hey, Scott. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good. Yourself?
If I were doing any better, Scott, I would be you.
Well, we can keep working at
it. So, Scott, it sounds like you have a software company that years ago you were not in the software business. What was your first job, and did it have any bearing on what you do today?
Not my first job. My first job was filling up candy and soda vending machines across New York City and the 5 boroughs. So riding in a van, cigarette packages and candy bars and soda cans, and taking out the coins. Think you learn from any job. So I'm sure there are lots of the interpersonal skills or hard work, or I think we had to get up at 4 in the morning in order to pick up the stuff and be on the city streets early. So you'll learn all that on any job, and you can apply it to whatever you do down the road.
Process and time management. So, Scott, I understand that you're looking for best practices around teaming to respond to RFPs as a software company. And so before we get into this, and Kizzy, I'd like to draw you into this for sure. Are you referring to federal opportunities, state and local opportunities, or both?
State and local.
Okay. And so as it relates to state and local opportunities, it sounds like you're using teaming with a lowercase t. And for the benefit, and Kizzy, are you with us? For the benefit of anyone listening, we that we should just make a distinction between, okay, great, Kizzy. There is a difference between teaming federally and teaming at the state and local level. So at the federal level, it's a term of art, teaming, which involves joint ventures or prime sub relationships and mentor protege agreements that you can have with other parties. But at the state and local level, primarily those could be joint ventures for specific bidding opportunities. Are you familiar with joint ventures, and have you ever considered one of those for responding to an RFP?
Yes and no. Primarily, we would need to be a sub. So it's better for us not to be in a JV.
Okay, and just help me understand why is it better for you to be a sub depending on the RFP?
Because our headquarters is not based in the US. And so as a software company, it's better for us to only provide the software, but have the contractual relationship be between the systems integrator and the state or local government.
Makes a lot of sense. And so when you talk about being a software company, are you referring to custom applications and custom development primarily?
No, we have a off-the-shelf software for court systems.
Okay. So I think in terms of teaming, you would be primarily identifying companies that you would either be identifying opportunities that are bundled opportunities where that need is in addition to other needs, right? Or you would be identifying competitors who for whatever reason do not have the full capabilities that you have. Would you agree?
Yeah, so I guess it tends to be three things we see. So one, it appears that often the government has to go back out, especially in the software world, and rebid a contract, even though they're perfectly happy with the existing vendor. It seems to be more of a formality, so it would be great to avoid responding to those. And since we don't know the individuals at the entity, if someone is more familiar with what they're using and just knows the systems, then that would save us time. So someone who's already engaged at the customer, knows what systems they're using, brings a lot of value to the situation. And then it's the same, I think Kizzy spoke about it earlier, right? If the government entity is familiar with the systems integrator, that's a big positive. And as you point out, maybe that systems integrator doesn't have specialty in our software, and that could be a competitor or not competitor. That's less of a distinction. We really have an expertise in that piece of software, and that's what we do.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more challenging at the state and local level because, again, federally, teaming is a term of art, and there's formal structure within the federal procurement regulations on how those teaming arrangements should be structured. I think, let me ask you this question. Are you trying to get involved with certain government agencies, or are you generally interested in state and local government agencies?
So it's a case management system for court.
Okay,
like,
for court systems, and those can be state or local, right?
Yeah, so we're very specific, and therefore, we look at county, we look at city. Those are the two major entities that are issuing RFIs or RFPs to automate their court systems.
Right, so you would primarily be looking for bundled opportunities where your software and capabilities are one part, or you may be going to these court systems and helping the procurement officials or the business users understand what is the benefit of bundling something like your system with other business needs, because to the extent they can bundle the requirements, right, now it sort of sets things up for you to be a subcontractor on that opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so not that it's all about me, but the opportunities tend to be involving an old system. So in the beginning, there's migration of the data, there's extensive project management, there's process mapping. So there's a lot of work for the prime to do. And so we look for primes who have some expertise in those, but from the technical perspective, the average contract is probably 50% greater implementation services, conversion services, project management services, completely external to our software. I mean, we could perform those, but we prefer the partner perform those.
Yeah. I mean, the more I hear about this, the more it sounds like you would be talking to folks who are involved in these purchasing actions before there's a procurement, right? And
Yep.
helping them to understand, you know, here are some other business challenges you may want to solve in addition to ours, and simply trying to get them to bundle those to your benefit while also trying to, you know, create relationships
Right.
with companies that can meet those needs as well. And it sounds like quite an undertaking, and I would not want to understate what you're describing, because it sounds like that could be a full-time job.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you've mentioned in some of the other people we've heard places to look, you know, good suggestions on what they're spending with certain partners, which might help us for certain states.
Absolutely. So, and that's the challenge is, if you're generally looking to sell, that's one thing, but if you know who you want to sell to, now you can bite it in smaller your outlet.
Right.
And so, Kizzy, I know we're going to lose you in a few minutes. Did you have anything to add about teaming, either in general or particularly at the federal level?
I would just say, just adding to it is, you know, it's a process. You know, I understand, I can hear in your voice, you know, it's just, you got to just stick with it. And there's no magic answer when it comes to teaming. And I'm there with you from both perspectives, from being a sub and being a prime. It's just like finding amazing employees or contractors. It's always a journey. So just keep at it, and you know, you'll find exactly who you're looking for as time goes on.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us, Scott. And let's just give Tanya another try. Tanya, are you able to? Okay, so Tanya, you're going to stay in listening mode. Okay, so Tanya had a question about working a job and also obtaining certifications while you are working a job. So I think probably we're talking, Tanya, I'm guessing a little bit, is you may be talking about obtaining federal, or being able to assert a status federally or obtain a certification federally while also having a full-time job. So Kizzy, I know we're going to lose you in a few minutes. I'm going to give you the option whether you'd like to take this one first, and if not,
yeah,
that's fine.
I can definitely take this one. And yeah, definitely. The answer is yes. Like the greatest thing about the federal government is, honestly, there's a lot of flexibility. It's not as black and white as many lead it to be. I mean, I've been in the space for 14 years now. And so, yeah, so what's kind of cool about it is you can have a job, you can subcontract, as well as apply for the certifications. What's really important is that you meet the requirement for the certifications. That's what's really important, is understanding them. Like, for instance, for women-owned businesses, there, let me see, she wrote, I was looking at her app, she asked about the recording. Like, for instance, for women-owned businesses on the federal side, a female woman must be the majority owner. It can't be that, and you have to have voting rights if you have a corporation. So there's all these little things there that you want to make sure that you review, right? If you're looking to get a veteran-owned or service disabled, now is the time, especially for service disabled, to jump on that and apply, because the federal government is in the process of moving that function from the VA back to the SBA. So you want to make sure you don't get any applications lost in the shuffle. The other thing is this: sometimes when you're applying for certifications, woman-owned, economically disadvantaged, 8A, they may ask you questions such as, you know, do you have another job? Do you have another income source? And what I have learned with the federal government, you always ask permission and you write a letter. So as long as you explain, that's all they're looking for. You know, if you explain, I'm working and here's the reason that I'm doing it, there's no reason you can't apply. When I first applied for the 8A, I also taught online. And all I did was explain that teaching online had no function on running K-Parks Consulting, because I could teach online at any hour of the day. And so that's what's really cool. And then lastly, what's awesome about the position that you're in is you're also, you're able to really take that time to really understand the set aside, look to see what's out there on the market while you're working your full time and you have that revenue coming in. So I'll turn things back over to you.
Great answer, Kizzy. That's fantastic. I only had one thing to add. And by the way, there are only 2 more folks after this. Hang in there, folks. We know that you have questions and we're going to get to you. Tanya, I would just say at the federal level, you can also learn from what has worked for other people through a specific database. And it's the Small Business Administration Office of Hearings and Appeals. So if you Google SBA Office of Hearings and Appeals search decisions, what you're going to get to is an SBA database of different instances of people having issues like this, where the SBA actually adjudicates and makes rulings based on the specific circumstances of the applicant, right? And if someone's challenging their status that they're asserting, for example. So I encourage you, because I did a quick search in that database of, working a full-time job and being certified, and there were hundreds of results. So I encourage you to do that Google search and spend some time familiarizing yourself with that database, because it shows you how they actually rule on these kinds of things. If someone claims that you should not have a status, which comes up all the time in federal contracting. So thank you for joining us. All right. We have 2 folks left who hopefully have something to talk about. And Daniel Conrad, if you could join us.
Hello.
Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Good, yourself?
Good, good, good. Daniel, I know I sensed from when you signed up, and I don't have it in front of me, but I sensed that you folks are pretty far along in government contracting. So what was your first job? And how does it relate, or does it relate to what you do today?
My first job was I delivered mail for a hospital system. So I would go between offices and deliver envelopes and things like that. It's not related to what I do.
We always have things like that to look back on. And so what do you folks do today?
Cybersecurity.
Okay.
So any sort of cybersecurity services.
Okay. And I apologize because what I printed out didn't include the topic that you wanted to discuss, but I remember vague it was. Can you remind us?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. I think you kind of answered one a little bit about we are a women-owned small business and SDV, SOB too, SDV, OSB as well. And we see a lot of, we go after a lot of state and local work, and we see that they have local preferences or they require certification for people within their own state. So for example, if we're going after some work in Virginia, they say, well, we want a woman-owned small business that's based in Virginia, I guess preference, that type of work. And you've kind of answered that a little bit with teaming and things like that. But that was one of the questions I had was, how do you approach that if you're not based in that state?
So you're interested in using your federal statuses,
yes,
and leveraging them at the state and local level.
Yes.
Boy, that's a difficult trick. When you start looking into what the incentives are in different states and in different counties and large cities, what you inevitably find out is that they do not correspond with the federal designations. So for example, the state of California has a disabled veteran incentive for their state contracts, but I'm not sure I can think of another state that has one. And their requirements in California are not the same as the federal designation. And having one designation in the state or at the federal level doesn't necessarily help you meet the requirements in the other. And a lot of times there might be a geographic component to having these designations that might preclude you. So you might be a disabled vet, but if you don't have an office in California, or if you don't live in California, they may not view you as one and you may not get any credit for being that. You know, what I do like to tell people about these federal statuses is even if there's not an evaluation criteria around it, you can certainly put it on the cover of your bid and say, I'm a disabled vet. And, you know, you never know how that could matter in the scoring. People have to make subjective decisions all the time on how they're going to score a bid. And if you put your best foot forward and say, we're a woman-owned business, we're a service disabled veteran-owned business, you may never be able to put your finger on how that helped you, but it certainly can help you because it's an attribute of your business. So at the state and local level, it's a little bit challenging, to say the least, using your designations unless you have, where are you operating, in which state and which county?
Pinellas County, Florida is our headquarters.
Okay. So, and I can't even think of any state level incentives that Florida operates or that they use. So it's a little bit challenging, but I could sense from when I looked at your website that you folks have significant government experience today. Is that true? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so at a federal level, we have a few projects we've primed on. Our main approach is subbing on federal work, just to build up our past performance. At the state level, we don't have as much. We have a bunch of local contracts, though, with towns and cities and utilities and things like that.
So you have a significant business and you're doing federal subcontracting today?
Yes.
Okay, and on your federal subcontracts, are you getting performance evaluations by your prime contractors?
I don't know, actually.
Okay, it might be worth looking into, because if you can create some documentation around the fact that you're doing that work, that's always going to help you at the state and local level. People sometimes forget that you have to meet the bid requirements and give them everything they're asking for, but that doesn't always mean you can include letters of recommendation from your prime contractor on a federal contract or an evaluation document where either the contracting officer or the prime contractor is evaluating you in a positive manner. So I would encourage you to try to incorporate some of that documentation of your past performance into some of the state and local things that you're bidding on. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's only part answer to your missing.
Sorry, you cut out.
I said I feel like that's only a partial answer to your question. Which part are we missing?
No, I think that that answers that question. My only other question was about sometimes we have trouble doing the initial reach out to state and local clients because they have sort of strict procurement rules and they just kind of fall back on those. Do you have any recommendations for getting that initial foot in the door?
Yes, two. One of them goes back to something that came up earlier. So if you know who you want to do business with, meaning a specific federal agency, do open records requests on other purchases that they've made that involve cybersecurity or where that may be bundled. And then you can read about when are their contracts ending, when would they be renewed, because they're always needing to release the contract itself. And we're able to get that through MyGovWatch and an open recs access request. You can do it as well. You can be anonymous if you do it through us, and there's some advantages to that. But if you know who you want to get to that through, it's also important that you contact people outside of the procurement process, meaning before one starts, right? So as you know, there's a cone of silence once a bid is released. So you want to try to create reasons why people in government should be talking to you beyond simply, hey, do you need cybersecurity? And I would just suggest that this event itself is an example of that. And here's what I mean by that. What do we sell? We sell bid notification, bid matching, and other ancillary services to current and aspiring government contractors. Well, that came up on today's webinar, but that's not really the focus of the webinar. So there are ways to create content for people that you're selling to that might make them so interested in engaging with you that that they engage with you. So I wonder, would it be of value if government agencies that you were selling to had reports from you on what other government agencies are actually paying for cybersecurity? So if you were to do open records requests in different parts of the country, you would be able to create reporting and say, hey, I'm not just calling you to tell you to do business with us, but we have some proprietary reporting that we've created that talks about the cost of cybersecurity. And that will make people pop their head up because people are interested in filling in knowledge gaps, which is the purpose of today's event. And you could take the same approach with your business, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
when
that's
I'm
a
happy to
good idea.
happy to talk more about it offline if we trade some emails, give you some ideas, and just sort of, you know, keep in touch about this because it works for us. It works for lots of businesses. And I think based on how far along you are in your company's trajectory, it could work for you too.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, good deal. And so there's one other person I see on the call who has not participated yet. I see Michelle Leonard. Michelle, are you with us? And we just have maybe a microphone or a muting issue. So we're going to give Michelle just a few minutes to work that out. Folks, we have covered everything that people have brought up so far, at least things that they've asked about prior to the event. We still have some people on the call. I still have plenty of time. Are there people on the call who maybe want to broach a topic that hasn't come up or go further on a specific topic, maybe that we already covered? Because there's time to do that. And I'm going to check the chat here and see if there's anything that's coming in that way. And if you have a question or if you want to talk about something, you can raise your hand as well because we're monitoring that. And I think that's just the click of a button. All right. And so, Michelle, I've just sent you a request to unmute. And so you may see that. Or Michelle maybe may have walked away from her desk, which has happened. And that's okay, Michelle. We won't hold it against you. Let's just see what we have here. Okay. So I'm just going to say this. For any folks who are on the call who are not currently using the website or who may be using it, using the free basic edition, I just want to remind you, if you sign up MyGovWatch.com account today, you can start a new trial and you'll get a 14-day test for the use of MyGovWatch. So I want to encourage you to do that if you haven't given it some thought or if you haven't been using the site the way some folks have been using it for years who are still with us. I also want to talk about how you can predict the next installment of the MyGovWatch Live series, the B2G Roundtable. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this on the third Wednesday of the third full week of every month at 1 o'clock Eastern. So if you're not sure, and if you're not sure when that would be, just look at your calendar. I think the third week of April, the third full week, would put us at April 20th, which is Wednesday the 20th. And the best way to make sure you hear about it also is to have at least a basic edition account of MyGovWatch, because primarily we're advertising this series to folks who have either a paid account, premium users, leads only users, and basic free users. So you folks will hear about it. Others may hear about it in social media or through sponsored ads. So next session of MyGovWatch Live will be the B2G Roundtable. So I'm just going to stop one moment and see if we had anything else. Okay, let me just see here. Looks like we have a chat. So Dan says, what would you consider a healthy, I guess, win rate for proposals submitted versus one? Boy, if I could answer that question, Daniel, I would be on a beach somewhere. It's really not about the percentage. It's about what resources do you have to respond to RFPs. There are some folks on this session today who may be in a department of 5 or 6 people responding to RFPs or have an elaborate support system for RFPs. They're making a different calculation about whether they should bid on a contract compared to small companies where the owner, or maybe the owner and one other person, may be developing a bid response. So I wouldn't focus too much on, I wouldn't focus on the win rate as much as the decision-making process prior to making the decision to bid, right? And there are all kinds of strategies for making good decisions on what to bid on. Some of them involve whether or not you helped create the specifications by engaging with public officials on what their needs are prior to a bid process. Some of it may be based on knowledge of what happened with the same procurement last time it was out. But no one could answer what is a tremendous win rate. The focus should be on making good decisions about what to bid on and not focusing on the percentages on the back end, if that makes sense. Okay. I think that's going to be it, folks, unless there's anything else. We so very much would like to thank you for joining our first installment of MyGovWatch Live. And the recording for this will be available. You can ask for it by emailing me at nick.bernardo@mygovwatch.com. Thank you so much.